did you know? The giant eyes of the curse-breathing basilisk enemies are actually fake. Their real eyes are much smaller and found lower on their faces. The large eye-like growths are likely cosmetic and meant to intimidate predators. Similarly, despite their physical appearance, the butchers found in the depths are all women. This fact links to a joke during the game's development. One developer created a female character wearing only a sack and wielding a giant butcher knife. They used the character to invade the worlds of debuggers, to then hunt them down and kill them repeatedly. The experience stuck with the team and they created a character based on it. This ultimately became Man-Eater Mildred, the crazy lady of the swamp. Several areas in the Dark Souls universe are based on real-world locations. The city of Anor Londo is based on the exterior of the Duomo di Milano in Milan, Italy. The architecture of the new Londo ruins is based on Mont Saint Michael in Normandy, France. And the demon ruins are based on the ancient stone temples split by tree roots of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Dark Souls director Hidetaka Miyazaki spoke about these allusions in the game's art book, saying it's much easier for the planners, designers and 3D artists to start with a basis in reality than to start from scratch. Real things contain such a mixture of influences and ideas and such an abundance of information. I wanted to try using this technique in Dark Souls. But these aren't the only elements in the game with real-world inspirations. The Dark Souls merchant Donald of Xena is known for being eccentric, but his bizarre armor isn't quite fantasy. Donald's Helm of the Wise is actually based on a tournament helmet owned by King Henry VIII of England. There are also references to real-world people in the game. There's an exceptionally long katana in Dark Souls called the Washing Pole, which can be purchased from Shiva of the East. The East in Shiva's title refers to Japan, and the katana itself is a reference to the legendary samurai Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro was famous for fighting with an exceptionally long katana known as Monohoshi Zao, or laundry drying pole. Most new players struggle with the bosses of Anor Londo, Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Smo, but not many people realize that Dragon Slayer Ornstein gets his name from the 20th century pianist and composer Leo Ornstein. The helmet of the Dragon Slayer is shaped like a lion, reminiscent of the composer's first name, and when Ornstein is defeated by the player, he drops the Leo ring. Miyazaki likes to hide references to other FromSoftware titles in his games, and Dark Souls is no exception. Seath the Scaleless gets his name from Seath the White Dragon from the PlayStation game King's Field. The Moonlight Greatsword is a reference to the Moonlight Sword from the same game. King's Field itself heavily influenced the Souls series, and some even refer to the Souls games as spiritual successors to the King's Field series. And Trusty Patches is a reference to Patch the Good Luck, the cowardly lynx pilot from Armored Core for Answer. Even the Praise the Sun gesture was originally found in Demon's Souls. It can only be seen when a miracle is cast while the Ring of Sincere Prayer is equipped. When Miyazaki showed the game to the rest of the company, he presented a Praise the Sun pose. One of the company's higher-ups, however, told him it wasn't cool enough. Miyazaki said he would get rid of it, but instead hid it in the game. When Dark Souls entered development, he was determined to use it openly. He even acted out the pose himself so that artists could take reference photos. Dark Souls went through several major changes during development, and some unused elements can still be found in the game's data. Andre the Blacksmith was conceptualized as a descendant of the king who would push aside a statue in Firelink Shrine to open a hidden path. Of course, in the final game, Andre is a simple blacksmith, and there is no hidden path. But by hacking the game, it is still possible to play the cutscene of the statue being moved. The main hub of the Dark Souls world, Firelink Shrine, was originally a water temple filled with ponds and waterfalls, but as the concept of fire became more important to the game's lore, the water was slowly phased out. In fact, the main bonfire of the game is located where a small pond used to be. Of all the Dark Souls maps, the painted world of Ariamis was the first to be created. It was an early prototype area to test the game. As production went on, it became obvious that its snow-covered landscape didn't sync well with the rest of the game, and it would have to be removed. But Miyazaki loved the environment, so rather than removing it entirely, he suggested the player enter it through a painting instead. The boss of the painted world, Crossbreed Priscilla, wasn't originally a boss either. She was actually created as the game's main heroine. The brass armor worn by the Dark Moon Knightess was originally going to be the armor of a starting class known as the Pagan Knight. Ultimately, the shiny golden armor was too difficult to balance with the other starting sets, and it was repurposed as late-game armor. Guinevere, the well-endowed goddess of Anor Londo, was also supposed to be quite different. Miyazaki himself isn't very fond of her busty appearance, but the artist that drew her was so proud of his design, Miyazaki didn't have the heart to reject it. Fans of the Souls games have notably influenced the series, as well as FromSoftware itself. The fact that Dark Souls is available on PC is due to the popularity of a fan petition asking its creators to port the game. Miyazaki had never developed any games on PC and was entirely unfamiliar with it, but he felt it should be done to please the fans. Unfortunately, due to the team's inexperience, Dark Souls on PC was an infamously bad port. To fix it, a Nexus mod user named Durante created a mod called DS Fix. This mod unlocked the game's resolution, frame rate and other graphics options to be tweaked by the player. DS Fix has since been downloaded over 700,000 times and has even been publicly acknowledged by the game's publisher, Namco Bandai. Impressively, the first version of the mod released in under 30 minutes of Dark Souls being published on PC. Beyond that, some fans were given the opportunity to create content for the game itself. Namco Bandai held a contest in 2011 where fans were able to submit designs for potential in-game shields. 10 shields were chosen as winners, all of whom received copies of the game signed by Miyazaki. Only 4 of the 10 shields made it into the final game, however. Did you also know that the poise stat in Dark Souls 3 seems to be disabled, and that someone was awarded $10,000 just to make sense of the lore? For even more Souls trivia and Swedish accents, I highly recommend clicking the annotation on the screen.